Hello and welcome. This is the fourth game of the BGA Adults vs Juniors match. White is Gokul Subramanian and black is George Han. We have some more star points in this game and a high approach, more influence oriented, and again an attachment. This is good to develop the largest side of the board, and it will make a follow-up around M3 more interesting later. The normal move would be to back off, whether high or low, or even to Tanuki and maybe enter the side that white is trying to expand. In the game, white extended and played the tiger's mouth. This is an old-fashioned joseki. The modern joseki is to play the diagonal and then continue on the side. Black might take this sort of big point, and black might continue building on the other side. Later, this is an interesting follow-up, and there's still some push and cut agi and the potential of pressing white again. You can see that even in this shape, white pushing again is a very big move. If white can control the center around here, then black's moyo disappears, and black's stones are in shortage of liberties, and the corner's still not solid. So normally black wants to hane around here, so black might play here, and white can just keep pressing all the way and trying to expand this side, maybe even press again. So another option for black is to press, but this early in the game it might be a mistake to give white this much territory when there's so much space here to fight for. Another idea is to attach. This is better for reducing white's eye space, but in an open space it's generally over aggressive. For example, like this, black can't really tanuki because there's this cut, and these four stones are about to be captured. Then the corner will end up being lost, and black's shape is still not very good. But it's hard to find a good move for black. Normally you probably need to defend again, and white might jump. If you keep going, the shape isn't that great. White might keep pushing a few times, and later, when there's a stone around here, it's probably too deep for white to play here at the moment, but there's a nice shape point here. It's interesting for white to develop this side of the board. Even if black adds another move, it's already been reduced by taking control of the shape and the mutual expansion point. So in this point you could press, and again black can hane, and there might be this sort of variation. White can consider fighting immediately, and then there's a sort of push and cut. But black's still in the shortage of liberties, and white can keep crawling a few times. If you do manage, for example, to get black to retreat submissively, you can probably reduce immediately, because this white group does have quite a bit of eye space, because it has access to the corner, and you can stay away from black's wall. In this shape, you're aiming to get this. Black doesn't have to respond, and then there will still be some agi of the cut, and maybe this move. But it does give white some eye space as well. Later, the endgame is quite likely to be settled like this, and this is a good move to prevent white hane in the corner. Like this, white is generally very happy. The shape is just too efficient in an area where black had the first move. This is the old-fashioned variation. The good follow-up is to still be fighting for the center control, and there's lots of space on both the top and the right side. This would be the proper move to defend the cutting point in a ladder, but the AI tends to like this move. The cutting point is still defended in a ladder, and then white can play here and black can tanuki. If you play here, one of the problems is that there's still some agi in the corner, and still a shortage of liberties in the center. And if you play anywhere else, then actually the cut is still interesting. White will need to defend first, probably, but there's a lot of agi to get strength in the center and the corner. This would be a normal follow-up. It might be more interesting for black to try to defend more efficiently, say around here. If black cuts now, you probably will capture it. But later this stone has the nice agi of being able to Atari underneath, and it's still threatening the cut, so it's trying to be quite efficient. This move is directly aiming at the cut, but it's not that efficient, and actually once black has blocked off the corner, white doesn't have that great eye space either. Black should really just defend quite solidly now, because white has defended solidly. And black can be happy to have blocked the corner so nicely. This is also a good idea. In the game, black played quite far away, but white never managed to punish it. The immediate push and cut is very powerful. If black keeps blocking, there's a lot of bad agi around there. One idea might be to play here. For example, if you play here, then this is looking like a ko. Similarly, if you play here, like this, then it's more complicated. If white can get this exchange, and black can get this, it's not really clear what's going on here. But white does seem to have the advantage in this fight. The AI was suggesting just to get control of the corner in center, and then I'm guessing it would be a good idea to reduce black's thickness from this side. In the game, white approached from this side, like pincered. And white going into the corner in the standard Joseki, and black got center. Black was trying to build a moyo here, so this seems to fit with black's plan, and developing on the left side with 2 low stones doesn't seem to be particularly efficient. It seems more natural to not be so interested in the corner and to worry about the center a little bit more. And this sort of shape would be a more standard way to play. The left side may still be low and not that easy to develop, but white has more access to the center in this variation, but it will depend on what happens next. Like this, white might try to use the Aji inside to create some problems, especially as there's still a push and cut on this side. So even the invasion is interesting, because there's a move here threatening to pull out the stone, and there's all sorts of moves here that would be threatening the push and cut. And just playing away would also be an idea. So going into the corner was slightly questionable. The modern move is to play solidly, and in the game we'll see how white tries to punish this connection. At this point, black is going for this moyo on the top side, and white has made it easier for black to build the moyo, and especially with this cutting point, continuing to build the moyo is a good idea at this point. It's pretty important for white to respond around here because white's solid shape can be attacked because it's quite cramped, but it's also very important for white to reduce this area. Another black move in this area would be quite scary. Black played into the corner. This is more often played when black has some access to the side on both sides, and then it's difficult for white to choose which side to block on. In this case, black has a low stone here, so white's decision to block on this side is correct. For example, if you block on this side, then you're not really developing anything because there's already a stone here. And if anything, your own group is quite vulnerable with this push and cut. And if you play on this side, then you're just giving black a panuki where you had potential, and this white group doesn't have 100% ice space yet. So this is a good direction, whichever Joseki you pick here. Extending is a good idea, just letting black take the lower side because this stone is already low and white can take Sente. So again, the important point is the moyo on the upper side. This is a good expansion point or pressing, and pushing and cutting is still interesting as well. Normally black has to jump here. We saw the previous variations were a bit tricky. In this case, there's already a lot of Aji around here, for example. And there's also some endgame that you've gained in the corner, maybe with this flank later. But for the time being, you can play to develop the right side while making it difficult for black. For example, if black tries to reduce this right side, there's this shape point, and black is in a serious shortage of liberties. All these stones could either destroy the upside or connect up to the white stones. And if white gets another wall around here, it's not clear that this black stone is in an advantage in the fight against these 3 white stones, even though black has so many supporting stones. So maybe black has to just retreat, but white pushing through is quite painful. In the game, white defended. Another partial reason why it's not so interesting to defend is partly because the lower side is low and you can continue pressing it low while reinforcing your group. So like this, you still have some honey and connection Aji, something like this. There's still ways to make ice space and still follow-ups to continue in the center, such as this attachment. You probably can't get away with this because black is already alive in the corner, but you can extend and just make shape. Black played this move, which was negative for black's liberties. It's pretty much never a good exchange. If you're going to play here, you just play here. And locally, this is more normal. If you do play here, normally you keep going, otherwise it's not clear why you played there. You've strengthened white, which actually means white has more ways to get inside this area, even though you have that 1 extra stone. Because, say you don't add another move, when white plays here, it reduces the value of the d14 move a lot. But black did get the important white point, so that's very good. At this point, white can still consider pushing and cut, especially as there's no way black is going to pull back anymore, because you've already invested in these stones with this, so you can't sacrifice them anymore. It's still not that clear, but black owes a move up to the upper side, but if black pushes, then white is getting out quite nicely as well. Yes, it did seem more interesting to try to find a way to cut in order to get just 1 or 2 extra stones inside this area. Because in the game, white never managed to threaten this cut, and black built a large area here. At least if you can force black to defend while getting us some stones on the outside, it's still advantageous. Even just this is something to consider. And then making shape around here. Essentially, it should be harder for black to honey on this side because there's a cutting point around here, and white still has the ladder in this direction. And again, this is a very big point. It's almost a probe, so if you're going to make d14 useful, it's tempting to try to add another move. But like this, white has already lifted the head on the left side and has some expansion potential. White has the initiative, And actually there's still some pretty bad agi of this happening, especially as black has shorted the liberties. So some move around here will aim at all those problems, and there's still interesting things about the cutting point. Even just developing like this would be quite nice. Black defended, so at least black is efficiently dealing with the weaknesses in this area, but at this point white has the opportunity to connect the stones up and leave the agi at the upper side. Later there's all sorts of interesting things going on, especially if white has some stones in this area. Maybe just jump, and if you can get black to respond, that's already nice. Black could seriously consider fighting back here, and probably white doesn't have the time to respond here because this is too important. So white does something and then black can continue trying to attack, but this is fine. The black shape did get into a bit of an inefficient shape, because here white can press on both sides. If you keep responding, at least white is connecting the line in a nice way. This point is getting very urgent now. Even now there's still potential for white to build in the centre. And there's actually still some interesting agi with the push and cut, even with all these black stones. White could also consider turning. The problem move was just to pull back, and in this way you might be able to double honey, for example. Or at least get slightly more efficient shape. In the game white played here, which is a good follow-up locally. Black just connected the stones. Then white made a big mistake here. So at this point white already doesn't have a good move locally, to be honest. Locally the correct move is to play here, and black has to connect up the stones. I mean, you can play here, but you're always leaving the agi of white cutting. For now, white will just connect in the centre, and you'll be forced to add another move. So the correct move is just to play here, and then white can do the same thing. And now white has the monkey jump as well. So this was a nice way to follow up. So of course white will defend it on the left side first. But even better would be for white to not play any moves at all, and just to turn and connect the left side. Because later there is the possibility that you want to play here in centre. If black doesn't do anything, then black is completely cut off here. And this stone can be that vital move just to get that extra eye space and reinforce the connection here. You still haven't given up these two stones yet. So essentially it's not that big yet for black to capture these stones, because later you'll still have this move. In the game, white committed to cutting through, but white didn't have many liberties, and black connected up very nicely. So this way around, white stones here are already not connected, and the whole group is in danger. Whereas like this, white would have access to the monkey jump, would get this in centre, and these stones are already connected, and then white stone here becomes light. So basically black didn't get tricked, and this would be a disaster for black. But black played correctly here. At this point white should do the same thing, maybe press again. But actually, since black is so solid here, capturing with eye space, potentially capturing some stones, black could play more strongly even. There's a risk that black will just counterattack this whole group, so it's pretty important to close the line. White closed the line here, but there's still a cutting point. In the game, black just cut. It's actually very big to reinforce the weaknesses here though. So on this right side of the board, there's still a lot of agi, which is created by this knight's move. Probably black is not going to invade unless black gets super solid inside, because even if black can live here, it's not necessarily worth it. It is actually very nice, but it's not that comfortable to live. For example, if you play here, you might risk dying if white gets a bit more solid. And there's this sort of variation as well. So locally, it's sometimes good just to press white low here, and it's a bit of a pro, because if white plays here, there's going to be some interesting agi later. For example, using white's weakness of the push and cut. This is going to be centre, this is going to be centre. But if you play here, then later this might be centre. Maybe it's not centre, but it will have more of an impact threatening the honey. So getting that one extra stone will make a difference in how much black can get from this area. And white is still open on this side, and black can play a good point to expand the lower side and reduce the left. So black just cut immediately. This is fine as well, because black is so solid with no weaknesses. White starts to get into deep trouble from this Atari. You should just work here, or not playing anything at all is even better. Like this, white can Atari from this side, and then you can cut, but it's going to be gote. And white will develop this area quite nicely. It's just the general story of when you're in a cross-cut position, don't Atari either side. Black can play this sort of move, but it's not necessarily going anywhere. For example, yes, black can save these stones, but white will have centre to deal with the centre group. And it's not that interesting connecting strong groups to strong groups. Or again, black can cut, but that will just lose the fight in the centre. And it's not very interesting to save these white stones, because even if white saves these stones are still not saved. So it's actually not as big as it might look. In the game, you can think of this Atari as being even more sensate now, because white is trying to fight against these two stones. But I think white can't really afford to connect, because this black group is so strong, and this black group is pretty strong as well, because white is deep inside black's area. So even when black Ataris, white probably can't connect anymore. So black just extended. This was quite nice, though black could have taken the initiative to start attacking. And this would be more of a shape point. You might even be able to jump here and actually try to kill the whole white group. And even if you can't, then since this double honey is shaped, this connection is not necessarily the best move locally. You might want to jump, you might want to connect. Again, actually black could really try to attack severely and ask white to help black reinforce. And white is a long way from home, whereas black is almost already connected up to these stones, and this line is quite difficult to get between as well. In this shape, I think once again, black should probably have just pulled back. You pull back your fist, getting ready to punch. Wherever white plays now, it will be difficult. If white plays here, there'll still be a cutting point. If white plays around here, it's just not so efficient, and black might start trying to reduce this area, and if black just gets a few extra stones, then once again, this group will be weak. Again, black might have been tempted to play here, but this would be the solid shape. So black made a big mistake here, and the game became even though black just had a very big advantage, because white managed to capture this stone. So white defended this cutting point, also managed to defend this cutting point, and black owes a move inside, and then there's still a cutting point on the outside. In fact, black should have just connected and fought back like this. Actually, especially with the potential capture of these two stones and this Atari, black is still quite solid inside. If white plays around here, there's still this sort of agi, and white is cut to pieces. So it might be correct just to connect this stone, which is pretty important given that black can Atari and make everything very strong, and then white's alive. But now black getting thick here, there's some extra points and potential in the center, and there's also some potential for attacking, because these stones are reducing white's side space. If white just plays the simple variation, then this is very nice to capture a stone. There's still some bad agi in white's connection, for example like this, and white can't connect anymore. But this was going back to defend black's area. White lost quite a lot because white could have Atari'd here, and this is the ladder. And it's difficult for black to choose what to do. If you take this, white can Tanuki, or even immediately. This agi looks pretty risky with a push and cut around here. I mean, just in terms of shape, this is interesting agi. And how is black going to kill white when there's still a cutting point here, and then this group is still not completely alive if white gets into this area? So there's all sorts of bad agi here. But if black just plays here, then white always has this agi, and there's already an eye, and there's pretty much already an eye in the center as well. And then white can fight more strongly by cutting. And just locally, this is worth a move to reinforce the right side, and these two cutting stones are very vulnerable. At least, while they run, white will be able to make this group completely alive. So this allowed black to connect. Even here, white should Atari. There is one eye and go to, but black can't play here in center. Both black groups are pretty strong. It's already quite difficult to find a good shape to save these black stones. White will just be trying to lean on these stones in order to get that extra eye. And then this group is not completely settled either. Maybe just a touch. This Atari, black made this exchange. Similarly to the left side, these short black's liberties, they make them heavier, and these stones got captured later on, so they lost points. For example, you can imagine later in the game, it looked something like this, then this exchange has become very bad. It allowed white to connect easily underneath. There's actually a lot of different agi here, with this sort of attachment. Locally the shape is still to connect, because this has helped black, even though it's not worth many points, and black is completely solid, but this cutting point is still a burden for white. Later, white really wants to counterattack against these stones. Locally on this side, there's already some bad agi now. For example, white can't really cut. White doesn't have the ladder. This shape is already difficult for white. There's a cutting point here, and you can't play here because these stones get captured. So just saving this stone makes a big difference. In comparison, if you imagine white capturing the stone, this line is already sealed off. And then another move here would be amazing. Actually, white did have an opportunity here. This group is already alive, so it's interesting for white to come out here. If black turns, then you can keep jumping. Similarly to the game, you're still aiming at h3 and all the agi that's involved there. So you might have some forcing moves around here, threatening h3. But since white has reinforced this group, I guess this time if black does Atari, you are going to connect, and you're going to try to attack these stones very severely. Part of the reasoning behind this is that you can still capture these stones. For example, Later from the attack, you just want to capture this stone in a natural way, which will help reinforce white's shape and threaten to cut, especially as black was trying to attack these two stones. And for the time being, you can't let these black stones die, even if you manage to kill white on the upper right, because there's just too much empty space in this region. Again, black turning here, it's a very good point. However, white should still try to separate. This time the reasoning is that the shape is very bad. For example, when black cuts, white can't Atari on this side anymore. But like this, you're losing a few points in the corner. And after you lose those points, at some point it'll be big to respond. You're still going to lose these points as well. This is pretty important because if you just connect everything up, if white plays here and Sente, Kasumiya's more solid shape just develops like this. You still haven't managed to claim this territory. The corner still has some problems, and it's not easy for black to get out in this region either. However, black is still alive here, and black does have some access here, and black can still continue developing in this direction. The main problem with this move is that white started attacking, and actually black got into serious danger for the whole next 50 moves or so. Locally, just reinforcing is a very big move, but black will also be able to reinforce. So this was a nice way to actively try to defend this endgame while attacking black. Connecting was correct. Even though it looks like an empty triangle, you can't afford to give this away when you still haven't gotten white to defend this endgame. And it also leaves an important cutting point in white's shape, and we'll see how black manages to use this repeatedly in the rest of the game. In a way, this is also playing where white is solid, and it was a bit more important to continue on this side, where black is not so solid, and also white is not so solid in the corner. So if white still wants to keep up the attack, there are some risks in the corner. For example, if you just play like this, then you've lost a lot in the corner. If you play like this, then there is some agi of getting cut. Maybe you play here first, and then you can cut. Firstly, black needs to defend around here though, but there's still some follow-up in the corner, and when there's follow-up in the corner, h3 is less of a problem. Black played here, and white reduced where black might make territory, especially as n4 was maybe trying to develop this area. But now black is extremely thin. White also has a serious problem around here. For example, you can change this, then you unate, and then you attach. If white cuts, then the corner is still not completely safe, and neither is the center, so that's not a good idea, especially as you've just helped black get this big endgame move. But you can push through here. And now, you don't play here to make these stones heavier, you just sacrifice them. There is this sort of agi. I don't really know if both players saw this in the game, but without that agi, black is actually in serious trouble. Partially because of that agi, it was probably better for black to lean on these stones more, to try to make them heavier, so that when black does get a line of stones here, black is capturing more stones. Something like this. The problem with this is that there's thinness at h3, and then these two stones are not well connected. So this was a very nice move by white. So black should be exchanging this around now. The better move would be to Kasumi, but even like this, black's shape is quite weak. The reasoning is that you should stay away from white's thickness. You might think that you should lean on the weak group, but actually there are no weaknesses here, and white will capture the stone naturally. If you can't afford to respond, that's very painful. Like this, you're staying further away from the Tanuki. And you're also giving ways for black to escape around here, which will actually still keep up the pressure on white's Tanuki. But whatever you do, there's already a problem in your shape like this. Like this you can defend still. But actually like this, the shape is already a bit risky. For the time being there's this attachment, so it's not really a problem. But white just needs 1 or 2 stones around here, and then this cut will be capturing a lot of black stones. So white plays here, but white should just capture the stone. If black plays around here, probably you want to gain some strength in this area, and maybe around here as well. I mean, this would be white's dream, and then to continue attacking. If black tries to get out around here, say, if you just get 1 extra stone around here, then this cut is going to be a problem. White played here, it is keeping up the pressure, but in some ways it's also helping black to run away, because white owes a move around here, and now black could have put the most pressure by playing this move. And now that there's several forcing moves around here, for example, locally, black can cut white off. White can probably live, at least there's something like this. But there's also agi of just playing here and then waiting for white to add another move. Like this, black can cut here directly, and then this long chain of white stones is going to be counter-attacked. Black just played solidly, and white reinforced. But once again, black has the opportunity to first reinforce, so black reinforces. If white just defends, then there's this cutting point, as we said before. Probably white should still have played like this, though, because white is getting profit on the lower side. And also there's extra profit with this move, so you play a big endgame move on this side. Yeah, maybe just h3. Instead of this move, it's quite interesting for white to try to add an extra move to prevent this. Locally, if black pulls the stone out, white can still connect. If black still plays here, then white will need to go back to live. Something like this, and you still have potential for an eye around here. This is Sente. This is going to be able to live pretty easily, actually. Even if you take away this eye, there's still another right here. So actually, white would be making some extra points there. If black's not careful, then it's not just that there's going to be a problem around here. There's also a bit of a wedging problem here. So like this, black is just cut to pieces. Something like this. If you Atari from this side, it's not really clear what's going on, but at the least, black is under attack. Okay, so black reinforced this weakness, which is very important, but there's still another weakness that black has to defend. So you can see that black should have played slightly more solidly, and not played so close to this Nikki. White played here. Locally, this combination loses a lot of points, but it was a pretty interesting idea. White did have some opportunities in this fight, but you can see that it's similar to this sort of idea, which is more of a standard shape. But you're giving black a huge amount on this side, just to cut, and you still haven't solved the problem with this cutting point, which means that black just connects up very easily. That would be more standard. This is more creative. It might be a good idea to just defend the cutting point. You lose something in the corner, like this, but at least you've solidly connected everything. If white pulls this back, you still have some potential of this, but even if you just start defending your cutting points. This was quite a risky move. Maybe black was thinking that white still owes a move here, but in the game, white almost managed to cut this group off in Sente, and then had the chance to connect back here. This is the timing where black should have taken the opportunity to cut white off here. Remember, there's still a cutting point here. In part, we still have the same principle that white really owes a move here now. If white takes this very big point, the pressure against this corner is still very interesting. In the game, both sides were trying to keep everything, and black cut. At this point, black already can't connect. For example, if you just play like this, black is going to have to cut, and it will be a capture race, because black is completely sealed in. For example, there's no cut around here, because you haven't even defended this cut one yet. So basically, when white plays here, black has to play away, and white can capture. And white still has agi around here, because there's a cutting point in black's shape. So black should never have cut, but it's hard to see how black is going to live if you don't see this move. There's pretty much no other move, because you need to aim at this cutting point. For example, I didn't think white can cut like this, because the cutting stones have too few liberties. Though to be honest, this is actually a bit tricky. The corner is not 100% comfortable, but it seems to be alive. But I guess at this point you have the opportunity to cut it here. So for now you're fine. And if white defends this cutting point, there's actually no good way to defend like this. You're losing a lot of points on the right side. Maybe this tiger mark? At this point, you would probably take the opportunity to just fix the shape, and then add another move. So actually still some weaknesses around here, but white also had cutting points. But white shouldn't really exchange this Atari. If we compare this to the game, white Atari's here, which is actually helping black. Again, black is in so much danger that black should just capture this stone. Otherwise, when white cuts, black can't afford to respond anymore, and white can just capture this stone, and then black has to add another move. And actually white can't afford to play here either, because black has the potential to connect up here, black already has the potential to connect up here, and it's not that easy for white to live inside. At the least, black is going to get some profit from attacking. So black is going to aim to at least get this sort of extra profit. And then if this still has an impact on the corner and also this group, that's going to be nice. For example, if white has to live like this, black could just reinforce everything solidly. White just pulled back in the game, and that gave the opportunity for black to defend. Another opportunity that white had was just to play here. Then there's still various interesting agi around here and pulling out with this Atari. But the key is, once again, this wedge is too severe. And black is just cut here. It's not that clear because there's a cut here, so it looks like it doesn't quite work for white. However, one thing is that you could just pull this stone back, and if black pulls this out, then you get to connect everything. Another idea is to play here first, and if black responds, then there's no cutting point anymore, and now you're really capturing black. And again, locally, you're more interested in saving these stones like this. So there were lots of combinations here because black was so thin, and therefore you shouldn't exchange all the agi, because if white plays well, then white could actually get a lot of strength here, and there's more opportunity to Atari from the inside. So in the game it looked like this. And once again, white should just jump and wedge. White had an advantage if white played like this. White attached and cut. So this was sort of a trick move, I suppose, because white is threatening to Atari, shorting all of black's liberties. But the problem is that black does have a lot of stones here, so black would want to capture this stone without even needing to spend a move, and there is a way to do that. Attack the outside stones, because this way you can connect. Like this cut, you can still connect, and black has Miai of capturing either of these two stones. It would be similar to the game if black pushed, but black can just connect everything up like this. Now when white plays here, you're still threatening to play that same cut, then this is still actually somewhat complicated. For example, like this, the only way for white to defend both stones at the same time is to Atari first, and then play here. Which does mean that black gets to capture an extra for a stone, but white is also getting profit. Maybe this was just more solid. It's easier to read about the variations like this. White Ataris and black Ataris on top, which is a good counter-attack. But even so, we still haven't solved the problem here. If white can just play this, then this wedge is interesting. In this particular case, since there are so many black stones here, this attachment has become more severe. But there's still a lot of agi around here. It's a good idea for white just to connect up underneath, and just save these stones for now. And if you do start playing around here, then this wedge is going to become a serious problem. For example, like this, the wedge has already become a problem. And it's not just that. It's not as if black is safe around here either. This wedge is even more of a problem like this. I guess this was the losing move, in a way. White still had some opportunities later, so I can't quite call it that. But this move, black found a nice way to put white into trouble. Right now, these two stones are about to be captured, and these stones almost have no liberties. Locally, you pretty much have to play here. That would be even. If black cuts, you can defend this cutting point first. If black blocks, then this sort of move is interesting again, because you can't Atari on this side because this is a double threat, like this. White is already winning this. You're in trouble on this side, and on this side, even though you can't cut, you can still peep. It's a bit awkward. Locally, it seems you can just about connect everything, because this way around, white still has a cutting point. But for example, white will have this incente, and also you've captured a Panuki here. For the time being, white can defend this cutting point in a very efficient way. And just overall, after black added a move at n4, this would be a big white success, because this was black's area, and black has been attacked horrifically around here. Even though black has captured several stones, they're not captured that cleanly. They're still on the board. There's still this cutting point. You've got a move at the shape point of a tiger mouth, and there's a peep around here, and you've gotten all this territory. So that would be white's strongest response, and it would be a close game. In the game white played here, black can't come down, because locally black only has 2 liberties. Like this, it's close, but it's not as if black can connect, and there's no Koagi because this is Atari from behind. However, black's reading was very good here, and black played the tiger mouth. The AI was saying that you should just continue playing here. Compared to the game, you may have sacrificed this, but at least you saved all these stones. In the game, these stones got into some trouble anyway. This way around, black captured. It looks like black had so few liberties, but somehow black just managed to win this. Black can't push around here, unfortunately, because that gets captured. However, black can push on the other side. At this point, black missed a good opportunity to win the game, but the reading is quite hard here. Black could actually block. Black is already winning the capturing race. If you look at it like this, you'll find that white can't short this liberty, and even though you capture these, that's not good enough. The stronger response is to wedge first. If you play here, then like this, black has 3 liberties here. Like this, black would win. So the strongest move is to wedge. You should short the liberties like this, because now you're threatening to capture like this, and if white defends like this, then it reverts to a previous variation. And if white plays here, then black can play here. And again, white doesn't have many liberties. White has so many cutting points, even though the shape looks so nice. It's funny that the most complicated variation is this symmetrical shape, where black has shorted white's liberties on both sides. It has this diagonal symmetry along this line. In the game, black just captured. And as we've seen, this is not the best way to capture either, because you short your own liberties like this. You can't connect these stones, for example, anymore. You should probably still short them like this. So now white has that one liberty less. For example, if you still wedge, then this way around you can actually connect your stones. After black played this, the game was even again, because white still managed to capture all these stones. But white helped black a lot, because as we saw, if white just played here, then later white is still threatening to capture these stones. And black can't connect anymore. And this actually made a huge difference in the endgame, because black found a very nice sequence to break through white's territory around it. So you could say this is somewhat of a losing move as well, and this is trying to get that extra point. So all the groups are settled. It's a bit sad that white never managed to get these peeps. Now there's no way white will get them, because white is already dead in the center. And black thought that this was the biggest endgame move. And it does look huge because it's, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stones. That would normally be 12 points. But if you did manage to capture this, you would actually have this extra potential, which gains a fraction of a point. However, what you have to realize is that even if white connected, white still hasn't managed to claim these points. So white has to spend 2 moves in order to get all these points. So that's white spending 2 moves in order to get these 6 stones back, which is 12 points. Then there were 2 empty spaces inside, and since white playing Hero Sente, that's another 2 points. That comes to a total of 10 points, but white is spending 2 moves to get that, which, if they were the same size, would just be 5 points. But any old endgame move on second line, in this game there's no bog standard second line move, all of them are very big. For example, if white already has a stone here, and maybe black already had a stone here, then this sort of endgame area is 6 points. So black can honey connect, and it's often better to descend, and white can jump or block. And compared to white honey and connecting, it's a bit different to the corner. This is slightly bigger than 6 points, because there's still a follow-up in the corner, which doesn't just take away T1 from black, it also takes away S1. So that's 6 and a little bit extra in the corner. But you can see that without these stones, black just descending, this is an extra 2 points that white is forced to fill in, compared to, say, white reducing black by these extra 2 points. So if you add those 2 points in, this is already 10 points, and there might be even stronger follow-ups than just the simple variation. And later in the game, white honey then connected here in center. If black had to add another move, then this was getting these 6 points, and then black reinforced, so that's another 7 points. And then there was still some thinness in white's position that this managed to solve, so 7 and a bit more points in center. And when you get something in center, the endgame theory is that you should double the value if you want to compare it to a gote move. So generally, the choice between a 7-point sente move and a 14-point gote move, it's hard to choose between the two. But if it was a 7-point reverse sente move and a 13-point gote move, you should generally choose the 7-point reverse sente. That's just a rule of thumb. In actual games, you have to depend on reading, but on average, a reverse sente move is worth double if it was the same number of points for a gote move. So this is very big, and it's much bigger than this area, where we're only talking about each move having an average of 5 points. So if you want to calculate exactly how many points this is worth in terms of Mii counting, which is part of endgame theory, you count that if white played here, white already saved these 3 stones, and also this one. So that's 4 stones saved, 8 points. If, however, it takes yet another move to save these 2 stones. So you have to halve the value of those 2 stones when you count the value of the first move, because it takes that extra move. For every extra move that you play, you have to halve the expected value from it, because your opponent might end up taking that move away from you. So these 2 stones is 4 points, and then there's an extra around 2 points or so where this has made a difference. So that's half of those 4 points would be 2 points. That would be 8 points plus an extra 2 points. However, you also have to consider that black might play another move, and then black might add another move locally. And that would be black adding an extra 2 moves. So you have to multiply this possibility by a quarter. That would be black capturing this extra stone here. So you subtract a quarter of that stone from your initial calculation. So overall, this is 8 plus a half of slightly less than 4, because there's some koaji that you had in the original position. So that's basically between 9 and 10 points. That's pretty big, but there were slightly bigger points on the board. For example, white played here, and these 4 dead stones, that's already 8 points, and you've lost the potential to take this point away from white. For example, if you had connected here, there's still some aji of, say, playing here later. And if white does defend, then you hurt white's shape on this side. So just these stones, it's already 8 points, and then there's some extra points around here as well. Probably neither is the biggest move. As we said here, we're looking at 7 points in centre, so that's going to be the biggest. Black played here, which was quite a nice idea. It was quite a nice combination. However, it probably didn't turn out as black hoped for. Black captured this stone, but black ended up losing a lot of points in the corner. Later, white honeyed and double honeyed, and black had to fill in all these points. So black was just reduced to these few points in the corner. So in actual fact, this is probably even worse for black than if you just honey connect and let white defend. This time in the corner you have an extra 6 points. And locally, you can still play here, and you can also play here, and there's still potential to reduce this area. The AI suggested this move, which is in a very similar spirit if you can get this in center, and was saying that this was the best endgame for both sides, and then white plays it. So actually it's even better for black to take this reverse center. If white tries to fight, black can jump. If white is determined to cut like this, then it becomes a capturing race. Black is dead. However, black has gotten an extra few points here and gotten all of the corner and center as well. So this is still profitable, and there's still this push as well. In fact, before black played here, black could have probably gotten away with this exchange, which makes a little bit of difference on the endgame on this side as well. So in the game, black actually only managed to capture one stone from this exchange, but the corner has been reduced by at least 6 points because white managed to get this in center. White's area has been reduced by a few points maybe, but it won't have been reduced if white gets that double honey. So it's become pretty urgent for black to play here. But then there's also this super massive move on this other side of the board. This endgame wasn't that great. However, now we come to the highlight of black's play. So black is slightly behind at this point because of losing points here. No, actually quite a lot behind. It was a close game before this happened. So actually, black should have cut here first if we just want to make this perfect, because later there would be endgame here. You can't easily block because there's a ko actually. White can at least capture this in center pretty much. I don't think black has any ko threats on the board bigger than this, which is about 30 points. But it's still helpful for endgame. For example, black could just connect it and it gains a bit more than 1 point. The question is what happens if you Atari on this side. Because you haven't exchanged anything on this side yet, you should cut here. Obviously you have to save these stones. That would be a complete turnaround if black managed to save these dead stones. Like this, Atari, 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 and white has not enough liberties. This extra stone is defending the cutting point, but actually it's not connected, so it actually doesn't help white's liberty, even though it's normally good shape. You can't Atari here, that's just dead. The only move is to connect. And then this is actually a ladder, amazingly enough. If you capture, then white is dead. And if you connect here, then white is in trouble on both sides. So you have to connect here to kill this, but you lose a lot of points here. So I just thought that was interesting because it's a fairly standard Tsuji to cut here, but the reading was pretty interesting. So black cut here in the game, and then Atari'd, and white fell for the trap. White's correct move was to Tanuki, reinforce the cutting points. White played aggressively in the center with this double honey. But black doesn't need to add another move anymore, because white's liberties here have been short. Even if you capture the stone, white needs to defend on this side, but locally you can't actually make another eye. If you want to be extra safe, you can cut here to take away the eye. However, white played here, and black found a nice sequence, exploiting the double Atari at this point. When I saw this, I thought white could just Atari here, because when black comes down, this is Atari, and then black can't cut anymore, and then white just defends here. And this is amazing for white. What I didn't notice was that there was an Atari here, and you've saved these cutting stones, and these stones, white can capture them, but it's not a big deal. So black has pushed white down here. White captured the stone. Probably white was feeling very bad already, but white should just capture on the outside. This is a big endgame move because it prevents black playing the diagonal. This is not such a big endgame. There's still some cutting agi, which was used later in the game, but the really painful thing is that black can defend the cut very efficiently like this, and black takes this. So the endgame from this point on is fairly accurate. Still, this is the biggest move. Black lost a few extra points here because black didn't take that center, but this was white's right anyway. White should have played it before the lower right. and black should have Atari here first because it's centre, it's pretty big, you should have another follow-up. Unfortunately, in this shape, you can't force the corner to spend another move. If it was like this, then the corner still owes another move. But there's a strangeness in the shape because you can't Atari, because white captures 2 stones, which gets 2 extra liberties where those stones were. And then the shape is fairly good. There are lots of moves, but white doesn't need to add another move in the corner anymore. Black saw the threat. Of course, should Atari first. If you don't do anything here, there's a throw-in, an Atari, and this is dead. So that's good. I shouldn't quibble about this, but connecting here leaves 2 co-threats, whereas in the game connecting here left 1, 2, 3 co-threats. White pulls back, that's correct. This is nice endgame, very big move. It's all normal. This was a very big point actually. For example, instead of playing in the upper right, black should have taken this point. Because you're threatening to play here, and now if white plays here, there's no threat. White doesn't have any good move locally. White's not threatening to capture your stones. This looks like a 2-point move, but it did defend some agi in the corner as well. So maybe it's 2 points in reverse center. In which case they're similar size. That's fine, I guess. One thing here is that white can get 1 extra point like this, and in center as well. Basically, black has to connect here later. This, even though it looks like white can Atari hit with a double Atari later, white doesn't have enough liberties. So that's 1 point difference. This actually was pretty bad at the top. For example, like this, there's a snapback. Even if there wasn't this problem, there's this problem, and this is a snapback as well. Connecting might be more nice in terms of shape, and you can live like this. But even though there are lots of cutting points, this is probably the better shape move, as long as you know that you can kill white like this. If you connect, then there is some bad agi, because your corner can't make life anymore. So, at the end of the game, black was ahead by 3 points. So, congratulations to George for winning this game. So there were a lot of moves in the centre in this game, centre fighting, and a lot of subtlety about direction of play. Black shouldn't have lost liberties here, but it didn't make a big impact on the rest of the game. White got into trouble here. White's trick move didn't work, and black cut white off, and already was threatening to capture some of the white stones, and sealed off the upper side in a very nice way. In this fight, white made a big mistake here. Don't Atari from a crosscut, but black made a big blunder here, and the game was even again. It was important to connect. This would set up the invasion, and even though you're not going to cut, you still have various ways to threaten to cut, such as peeping around here, which will help out these stones. And this was similar to what happened on the upper left. It just ended up giving white more stones to capture, because this is always centre. White took the key initiative to counterattack here, and with white's wall, it was very powerful. However, white exchanged these Ataris, which helped black a little bit, and missed that there was a key vital point in black's shape there. This was a very complicated fight, and black played excellently, capturing white stones. But the game was even because black's stones on this side also died. So I talked a bit about how to count this endgame. You can save these 4 stones, which makes it 8 points, but you haven't saved these 2 stones yet, so you have to half their value, and half the value of these as well. My calculation was probably a bit wrong. These 2 stones is 4 points, these 2 is 6, so it should be 10 to 11 points. Sorry about that. There was some pretty interesting agi with this cut and a ladder, and that's partly why white shouldn't have kept responding in this area and should have just gone for the attack earlier. But black had a very nice way to break into white's position, and from this point, white didn't really have an opportunity to win. So there was quite a bit of reading involved in this area, and black played this very well. And at the end as well, when white was trying to do something in black's area, black saw quite clearly how to play a simple variation where white couldn't do anything. Okay, thank you for watching.